Dennis Carter, ABC 13 sports anchor and the sports director and the host of Football Friday, which kicks off next Friday with the preview show. Join me on the Sports Buffet podcast. We talk about the high school football season upcoming, what's got Dennis excited, and more. It's Dennis Carter talking high school football on the Sports Buffet podcast. Always love Friday nights in the fall. It means Football Friday. ABC 13's Dennis Carter, host of the show, along with Justin Feldkamp, joins me here on the Sports Buffet podcast. Indeed, the previews have started just so far, and I know you've gone out several times to talk to some coaches and players. Early thoughts, how good of a season is this going to be?
I think a lot of questions are going to be answered this year. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of the new coaches are going to fare, especially in the city of Lynchburg with Ben Martin at EC Glass, Brad Bradley at Heritage. I want to see how Appomattox does with their new coach.
And these are all new coaches, Doug Smith at Appomattox. These are all new coaches, but they're old coaches in terms of this is not their first rodeo.
Yeah, they have been at other spots along the way, and now they get a little change of scenery. And of course, Brad Bradley is this will be his third job in 3 years because he was at Patrick Henry, then went to Amelia County, now at Heritage, and he's shown that he's been a winner at every spot, at every stop. So, you know, I expect big things from Heritage this year.
You saw the Pioneers, I believe, early on. What impressed you about just watching them run through a Brad Bradley offense?
I just like the enthusiasm. I love the way he's able to motivate the kids. He stays on them. You know, it's very organized practice. He knows exactly what he's doing every second. You know, he's got to be here. He's got to be there. I just like the organization. I like the way that they seem to be really taking it seriously. I think they've got a lot of speed. I think they've got a real good quarterback coming back in Parrish. He'll do well. And I think Heritage is going to have a good season.
Might have to watch Javante Parrish. Maybe at the end of the year he's around for that Football Friday Player of the Year. Another guy I would say that's got to be up for it just because he won't go away. He's still at Brookville, Kendall Beecraft. Even though losing some weapons, I think Kendall's got to provide Brookville with that stability on the offense.
Yeah, Brookville's going to be good again this year. You got to feel like with Beecraft there, and they've got a lot of other weapons, but with that maturity that he's gained over the past 4 years, Brookville's going to be right there, and I think they're going to be tough to beat in the Seminole District. They've got to be the favorite going in.
We'll lump some other Seminole District teams. Another guy's going to probably have to be looked at for some postseason Football Friday awards, at least in the mention. Randall Jones played really well for Rustburg last year, and I think when you get another year under John Berlin's system, you probably only are going to get better. And
that kid's only a junior. You know, it's hard to believe. It seems like he's been there 3 or 4 years already. And in fact, I interviewed him the other day, and the first thing I said to him was, "Let's say you're a senior this year, right?" And he shook his head. He said, "No, I'm a junior." I said, "Really? You have been at Rustburg forever, it seems like." But fun quarterback to watch. You give him the ball. He told me that he prefers to run the ball, but he also likes to pass it from time to time. But he is a running quarterback, and you know, just give him the ball and watch him.
Yeah, I think other teams prefer he not run the ball either because he's a hard guy to stop. Now, you know, we've talked about 4 teams in the Seminole, and it's not been the Amherst Lancers yet. And I think Cecil Phillips probably likes it that way if people are sleeping on the Lancers.
You better not sleep on the Lancers because I got a feeling after a mediocre season last year, they did make the playoffs last year, but it wasn't the Amherst County team that we've come to appreciate the winning ways of the past few years. I think the Lancers are going to be back. They're going to be loaded for bear this year.
And, you know, a lot of people, I think, were spoiled by the success that they had with Scott Abel, but I think Cecil Phillips can coach, and a lot of people say that Cecil Phillips can coach, that the Amherst fans just need to give him some time and let him do his things because, I mean, you know, I think Scott Abel did so much good, but Scott Abel and Cecil are different as the sun and the moon.
Who knows? This could be Cecil's coming out party for Amherst County this year. I mean, this could be the year that he really takes them to playoffs, maybe state championship. You never know.
And like we talked about, it'll be interesting because they do have a scrimmage against a team from Georgia on Friday the 17th. And that team from Georgia is coached by somebody that we both know, Bob Christmas. What are your memories of Coach Christmas when he was at JF?
I remember he always had very disciplined teams, very good football teams, and I always enjoyed talking with Bob because he's a great guy, good human being, and you knew that when you went over to talk to him, he would treat you right and, wouldn't make you wait around. And he was always just very hospitable with the media and just a fun guy to talk to.
We'll lump his old school and the other Bedford County Seminole school in, Liberty and JF. Chris Watts, those guys had a tough year last year, but Coach Watts is going to get them back. And JF, without Marcus Jones, you got to wonder how the Cavs are going to be.
Yeah, the year after Marcus Jones, it's going to be a challenge for them. But there again, JF always brings it with great defense. I don't know what their defense looks like this year, but they're known for hard-nosed, going right at you football, and I think the Cavaliers will be in the mix, and I think Liberty, Coach Watts will have the Minutemen back up and running after a tough year last year. I think they'll be back as a contender in the district.
Now, we talked about Bob Christmas. A longtime assistant of his was Ed Landis, who has moved on to Appomattox with Doug Smith, and again, that's a situation to where you're losing a stud in Josh Wilson. But you're bringing in new, fresh blood, too, with Doug Smith, so it could balance itself out for Appo.
Yeah, and, I think sometimes a change of scenery is good for all parties. And I know from talking with an Appomattox player and several players that they really like Coach Smith. Not that they didn't. Right. Not that they didn't like their former coach, right, Ben Martin, but they're real impressed, and they wonder why Doug Smith is not at Heritage anymore. How Heritage let him go. So I think Appomattox is happy with the new coach they've got, and I know Heritage and EC Glass are happy with their new coaches.
Yeah, and I think too sometimes kids feel like I think kids take it somewhat too personally sometimes when a guy like Ben Martin leaves to go from Appomattox to EC Glass. I mean, when you look at it, Glass is a more prestige job, no offense to Appomattox. Ben Martin lives in Lynchburg. It's a shorter commute. Ben Martin went to a Lynchburg school, albeit Heritage, but a lot of reasons for Ben Martin to move on. But, hey, if Doug Smith's coming in there, I think a tough part, too, sometimes is make those guys feel like they're your guys, even though they're, they haven't been your guys, but, 2 weeks.
And Doug is good at that. He's able to come in there and gain a lot of players' trust right off the bat. I know since he got a pretty early start, with not having to wait until the start of official practice, you're able to go in there, and now you can do things kind of in the off season. I think he's done a lot to develop player unity. He's done a lot of activities with the whole team and kind of getting them together, getting them to know him and vice versa. And I think that was real important, just to kind of get those guys together and get that player-team unity going.
Dogwood does lose a lot, though, too, in terms of other individuals. Stand out to Rick Adams leaves Alta Vista, obviously. Trey Edmonds leaves Dan River, and that's a big loss for Farrell and the group. Chatham gets a little bit, might have a little bit of a door opening. Nelson County. Should be a fun year in the Dogwood. And Gretna. How dare I forget Gretna? I'll get emails and texts from Saunders automatically if I do that.
Don't you dare forget the defending state champion, the Gretna Hawks. Gretna's going to be there. I was at Nelson County earlier tonight. Nelson County had a rough year last year. They lost their first 8 games. They won the last 2 to finish the year, and I think they feel like they've got a lot to prove this year. They've got a real weird schedule, though. I was talking to Coach Wells, and their first 5 games are on the road, and their first home game is homecoming.
3 home games this year.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think they're all district games if I looked at the schedule correctly. So no but in a way that can be, some teams feel more pressure, I think, playing at home. So should take the pressure off the Governors.
And I know the Governors, one thing that they're really relying on is a big line up front. Coach Wells was saying that they are going to average about 6'2", 6'3", 275 across the line. So those are some big hosses up there on front, up on the front line.
Don't want to forget William Campbell, too, although they do lose quite a few good players from last year's teams, Maxie Cruz being one of them. Another new coach that we haven't talked about, he's an interim, but he's an alum of the school he's coaching at, and that's Bobby Martin at GW Danville. What can Coach Martin do at GW?
Hopefully he can create a little bit of stability. The former coach was there
Jimmy Teague.
2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Not very long. I think if they give Bobby a chance and stick with him even if they do have a rough year or two. I think it's going to be critical for them to just kind of establish some stability back into that program. And I think he'll be good at that because he's been an assistant for so long with a football team. Of course, he was the basketball coach. That's kind of a weird situation. You don't see many schools lose a basketball coach and then rehire him as the head football coach.
But he's got a pretty good resume as a football player, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I believe he does, yeah. And he has been coaching for a long time, so he knows his stuff.
When we look at some other schools just around the Football Friday area, I almost view this as a season of new beginnings because Sam Wright, who played outstanding for Cave Spring last year, he's gone. I mean, there are players that are gone, but I think that's kind of exciting too because it gives new guys a chance. Adam Hardister, who was a finalist for Player of the Year in the top 10 for a couple years, he's gone too. Dakota Jackson at Northside gone. So it gives us a chance to see some new faces.
And get to talk about new names, which is always fun.
Right.
And it's kind of neat to see some of the older names over the past couple of years and what they're doing now. Think about Cave Spring and Josh Woodrum. Mm-hmm. He's now battling for the starting quarterback job at Liberty as a redshirt freshman. And he's right there in the mix. I mean, it's between him and one other guy. So it's fun to see how those guys have gone on and done well.
And we mentioned all these schools. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the area privates. North Cross won a state championship last year. VES gets their kids in probably later than anybody else does. But LCA, Frank Rocco, in my opinion, maybe one of the best coaches and best people in the area because LCA, they just keep that ball rolling.
Frank Rocco's record is remarkable. You take a look at what he's done in his 8 years at LCA. He's won 4 state championships. He's only lost a total of 6 games in 8 years. That's less than a game a year that he's lost. I mean,
I'm speechless.
That's incredible. I mean, it really is. And if you've ever been to one of Frank's practices, he really gets into practice. He is so focused. He's not a coach that's going to stand back and let his assistants do all the work and stuff. He is right there in the firing line. If you do something wrong, he's going to be in your face. He's going to tell you exactly what you did wrong, and he's going to say, son, I want you to do it right this time.
Well, and I think some coaches that we have around this area, or probably most coaches, don't get me wrong, they love Friday nights, but I think they love the teaching part of it more than, the adjustments part. And I think, I know Brad Bradley loves to play that chess game on Fridays, but I think he loves that teaching part too.
Yeah, I believe that 100% because those guys, they love to just get out there, share the knowledge that they have with the players, and they like to see, I guess, that light go on when maybe a player is struggling and not doing something right, and then they keep working, and then they get it right. And I mean, that's such a feeling of accomplishment for those coaches.
Should be a fun year. I know you've been talking to coaches. I'm going to start here pretty soon. So I think the Sports Buffet podcast and ABC 13 is definitely looking forward to a great high school football season.
Bring it on, as they say, Bob. Bring it on.
Dennis Carter's thrown down the gauntlet, folks. D, as always, we appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing you on Friday nights, starting with the preview show on the 17th.
Yeah, it's a little over a week away. It's coming.
Get ready. Get ready. It's coming. Whether you like it or not, or whether you're ready, it's coming. As always, Dennis, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bob.